Hello and welcome to PM1C Introduction to Pharmacy Ethics, part 1 of this lecture. In this lecture we're going to look at the following learning outcomes. So we're going to define pharmacy ethics, discuss the relevance of ethics in pharmacy practice. That will help us understand why we need to learn about ethics. We'll look at the General Pharmaceutical Council standards for pharmacy professionals and start to apply those to ethical dilemmas. It's important that you are familiar with the fact that these standards apply to not only qualified pharmacists, but also pharmacy technicians and you as pharmacy students. We're going to look at the 4 principles described by Beecham and Childress and apply those to an ethical dilemma. And we're also going to look at an ethical decision-making framework and learn how to apply that to decision-making in an ethical dilemma. This framework helps us to think about the issues we need to consider when faced with an ethical issue. In this first part of the lecture, we're going to focus on the first 2 learning outcomes. So we'll define what pharmacy ethics is, and we'll discuss how it's relevant to pharmacy practice. This video gives us a nice general look at ethics and a general definition. If you want to look at the same video but have static text to read on screen, you can follow the link at the bottom of this slide.
Ethics. The term ethics often describes the investigation and analysis of moral principles and dilemmas. Traditionally, philosophers and religious scholars have studied ethics. More recently, scholars from various disciplines have entered the field, creating new approaches to the study of ethics, such as behavioral ethics and applied ethics. The term ethics can also refer to rules or guidelines that establish what conduct is right and wrong for individuals and for groups. For example, codes of conduct express relevant ethical standards for many professions, such as medicine, law, journalism, and accounting. Some philosophers make a distinction between ethics and morals, but many people use the terms ethics and morals interchangeably when talking about personal beliefs, actions, or principles. For example, it's common to say, "My ethics prevent me from cheating." It's also common to use morals in this sentence instead. So, whether we use the term ethics to refer to our personal beliefs or rules of conduct, for the study of moral philosophy, ethics provides a framework for understanding and interpreting right and wrong in society.
So hopefully that was a useful little summary for you. Ethics really can be described as a systematic study of moral choices. So this could be phrased in what ought to be done versus what must be done. So what must be done would be according to rules or laws. What ought to be done is really looking more at the moralistic side of things. We also want to think about why something is done when we're thinking about ethics. So pharmacy ethics is a branch of medical ethics relevant to the practice of pharmacy and situations that arise for pharmacy professionals. Looking at pharmacy ethics will give us a framework for resolving questions about what ought to be done in pharmacy practice situations. And this graphic here, although it says research ethics, a lot of this is relevant to pharmacy practice. We've got good practice here, and obviously as pharmacists we're always trying to follow the best practice possible. We always want to maintain our professional integrity, It's important that we're also following the law, obviously, and what we're doing is valid. And safety is the prime concern of a pharmacist towards their patients and also towards colleagues. And morality comes into this when we're thinking about ethics as well. So let's just look at the differences between law, codes of conduct and ethics. So law, as we know, is a set of rules and regulations, and these tend to set the minimum standards for behaviour or achievement, and tend to apply broad societal standards and expectations to the way that we behave within society. There are consequences to breaking the law, and this is usually some kind of punishment. Codes and guidelines are set for pharmacy professionals by the General Pharmaceutical Council and also regulated by the GPHC. And the standards for pharmacy professionals give us the minimum standards that we should be following. And these guidelines and standards are reinforced with sanctions that can be administered by self-regulating professions. So the GPHC will enforce the standards for pharmacy professionals. When we look at ethics, ethics really are striving for maximum standards. So we're doing the absolute best we can in a particular situation. And they provide us with a framework, as mentioned before, a framework for resolving healthcare dilemmas. So it's worth taking a few moments to think about the ethical dilemmas that surround us in the world today. So just take a moment to think about perhaps ethical dilemmas relating to law and punishment, to healthcare, to the rights that people have to exert their choices. So looking at some of the ethical dilemmas of today, these might include issues such as the death penalty, abortion and rights surrounding abortion, animal testing, the right of people to have euthanasia as a choice, data protection, illegal drug use, and even things like cheating. So on this slide we have the supply of EHC. EHC stands for emergency hormonal contraception, also commonly known as the morning after pill. Some healthcare professionals may have moral or religious objections to supplying this, but it's also important for them to consider the right of the patient to receive the treatment that they have requested. And so it's important as a pharmacy professional to be aware of the guidelines surrounding the supply of EHC and what your responsibilities are. So ethical dilemmas are often moral claims that conflict with each other and often involve a choice between equally unsatisfactory alternatives. So not all people might be happy with the final decision that's made in an ethical or moral conflict. And as a pharmacist, you need to be comfortable with your decision. You need to be clear how you came to your decision, and you need to be able to defend your decision, whether that's against another healthcare professional, against patients, or perhaps even in a legal situation. Pharmacy roles have expanded in recent years, and so this has given rise to more dilemmas that can happen for pharmacy professionals. For instance, in pharmacist prescribing, there could be issues arising from errors or what some people see as an error, and new treatments such as those coming from stem cell research, present new dilemmas, for instance, in terms of where the stem cells are obtained from. So that's the end of part 1 of this lecture, and so far we've learned about what ethics is and thought about how ethics applies to pharmacy. In the next and final part of the lecture, we'll look at ethical theories and how we can use them to make decisions when we have an ethical dilemma in front of us. So you can take a break now if you wish, or you can go straight on to the second part of this lecture.